258 empty chairs. That is what Prince Harry saw when he peeked through the velvet curtain in Melbourne 3 days ago. Not a few no-shows, not a slow ticket week. 258 seats, draped in black cloth, standing like silent headstones in a ballroom that was supposed to be the triumphant relaunch of the $1 Million Prince. And what the insiders are now calling the financial autopsy of the entire Montecito brand. Take one more breath, because the numbers get worse. A speaker who 5 years ago commanded $1 million per appearance could not sell out a 300-seat conference room. Not at the original price of $2,400 a seat, not at half that, not even at a final desperate $500 for a digital pass you could watch from your own couch. Worse, when the organizers opened the doors and offered free tickets to local university students just to fill the seats on camera, even the students said no thank you. That is what a complete collapse in market demand looks like when you finally see it in a single evening. Stop. Before you scroll past this, before you assume this is just another royal gossip clip, I want you to understand what you are about to see. We have obtained the internal audit from Peak Performance Group, the organizers of that Australian tour. We have the ticket telemetry, we have the security invoice, we have the hotel relocation order, and we have a single confidential document delivered by encrypted mail at 10 o'clock that morning that triggered the immediate eviction of a British prince from his presidential suite at the Park Hyatt. By 2 in the afternoon that same day, his luggage was being loaded into a standard corporate hotel near the airport, a $300 a night room, no private entrance, no dedicated security floor. Just a man, a suitcase, and a career that had collapsed in the space of a single morning. Here is the question I want you to carry with you through every single minute of what comes next. How does a speaker who was commanding $1 million per appearance in 2021 end up paying out of his own pocket to stand in front of an empty room in 2026? Because the math, when I show it to you, is not just bad. It is catastrophic. We are going to walk through the exact dates, the exact numbers, the exact emails, and I promise you, there is a detail buried in this story involving a diplomatic passport and a navy blue folder from the British consulate that is going to stop you cold when we get to it. Stay with me, because this is not just the story of a failed speech. This is the story of a brand, a marriage, and an identity collapsing in real time. And the final piece of evidence, the one that suggests Harry may be quietly trying to find his way back to London, is so explosive that the mainstream press has not touched it yet. Let me set the scene exactly as it unfolded. 9:15 in the morning, April the 12th, 2026. Inside the cold, sterile backstage of the Melbourne Convention Center, the silence was deafening. Prince Harry stood motionless, peering through a thin crack in the heavy velvet curtains. Staff described the moment in words that still give me chills when I read them back. His face was deathly pale. His eyes were locked onto a single object, the digital dashboard on his lead assistant's iPad. And that dashboard, that one glowing screen, told him everything he needed to know about the last 5 years of his life. One column showed the original price point, $2,400 per ticket. The premium tier, designed to signal prestige, designed to echo the pricing of former presidents and Nobel laureates. The next column told a different story. The price had been slashed, first to $1,200, then to $800, and finally, in a desperate final gesture, to $500 for a basic digital access pass, the kind of pass where you do not even have to leave your couch. And the status beside that $500 number read, in stark white letters, unsold. Unsold, not undersold, not slow, unsold. A staff member close to the production overheard a haunting exchange in those final seconds before the walk-on music started. Harry, speaking almost to himself, whispered the words. I was told the demand was there. Where is everyone? The assistant, reportedly trembling, could only offer a cold, data-driven answer. Sir, the interest did not convert. We have been running the ads for 3 weeks. People simply are not clicking. People simply are not clicking. Let that sentence echo for a moment. Because in the modern speaking economy, that is the sound of a career ending. Not a bang, not a scandal, a click that never happens. A cursor that hovers over a checkout button and then moves away to something else. But this is where it gets absolutely insane. Pay attention to this next part, because the real punch did not come from the empty seats. It came from a document. A single legal notification, delivered via encrypted email at 10 in the morning while Harry was still rehearsing his talking points in the green room. We have traced this document back to Archewell's headquarters in California. It was a formal force majeure notification. In the world of high-stakes corporate events, force majeure is the nuclear option, the legal term of last resort. The clause you invoke when the financial reality has become so catastrophic that the contract itself must be blown up. Peak Performance Group, the Australian organizers, used that clause to inform Harry's team that because the revenue failed to cover basic operational overhead, the contract was being triggered into what is called a deficit clause. In plain language, that means the show is not earning enough to justify its own cost. And when the show does not earn its keep, every perk, every expense, every luxury gets stripped instantly. By 2 o'clock that afternoon, while the 42 people in the audience were still digesting Harry's recycled anecdotes about childhood trauma, his luggage was already being moved out of the presidential suite at the Park Hyatt. The directive was sharp and uncompromising. To mitigate the massive financial loss, Harry was relocated. Not to another luxury property, not to a boutique hotel, to a standard corporate hotel near the airport, a place where the in-room coffee comes in paper cups, a place where the hallway lights buzz faintly overhead, a place where, for the first time in his adult life, nobody held a door for him. But here is the detail that makes the whole story even worse. Pay attention to this, because this is the part most people get completely wrong. They think the 42 people in that room were all paying customers. They were not. The internal registration report tells a very different story. Out of those 42 attendees, 35 were there on complimentary media passes or industry freebies. Only 7 people, 7, in the entire city of Melbourne actually paid their own money to hear the Duke of Sussex speak. 7? You read that correctly. Not 7,000, not 700. 7 individuals with their own credit cards in a metropolitan area of 5 million people, in a city that has historically shown enormous affection for the British royal family. But that is nothing compared to what comes next. Because when the math of this disaster is fully laid out, when every line item from the ledger is tallied, the truth is almost hard to speak aloud. The Hyatt Regency produced a breakdown of costs for the event. Harry's private protection detail, a team of 4 elite contractors, 48 hours of deployment, total invoice, $62,000, his total earnings for the speech, $50,000. Do the subtraction. Slowly. 50,000 minus 62,000. After taxes, after agency commissions. After booking fees and logistical expenses, Harry was effectively paying $12,000 out of his own pocket for the privilege of standing in a room full of empty chairs. He was not the guest of honor. He was a subsidized attendee in his own show. Let me put that in terms you can feel. You know those bad weekend trips you take where you end up spending more than you budgeted? This was that, except the trip was supposed to be a global speaking tour. And the budget blowout was not on dinners and souvenirs. It was the difference between earning and losing money to stand in front of strangers. A prince of the British royal family was, by the end of April, the 12th, in the red on his own keynote. The self-destruction mechanism is now fully engaged. He is paying for a lifestyle that his own work can no longer fund. And as he sat in that Hyatt Regency bar in the early hours of April the 13th, the numbers on his phone simply did not add up. Stay with me, because now we have to back up and understand how this happened. Because $1 million speaker does not become a $12,000 loss in one night. This is a documented financial death curve. And it can be mapped, almost clinically, through 3 distinct phases. Phase 1, the activation phase, 2021. Fresh off the exit from London, the demand for Prince Harry was at a fever pitch. He successfully anchored his brand at the $1 million mark per appearance. At that time, major financial institutions, tech giants, and luxury corporations were willing to pay what industry insiders privately call the royal tax. They were not necessarily paying for his expert insights on mental health. They were paying for proximity to the crown, for the sheer curiosity of a prince unfiltered, for the photograph, for the bragging rights at the next shareholder meeting. For about 18 months, that strategy worked beautifully. The checks cleared, the calendars filled, the optics held, but every market eventually corrects, and Harry's correction came in phase 2, the repetition phase, 2023 into 24. Behind closed doors at major public relations firms in London and New York, something began to circulate, a document industry insiders call the Red List. We have heard from multiple sources at top-tier talent agencies who confirmed that corporate feedback was becoming dangerously consistent. One report summarized the sentiment with devastating precision. We paid for a visionary leader, but we got a therapy session. Read that again. We paid for a visionary leader, but we got a therapy session. That is the sound of a market turning. The stories of personal struggle, of palace grievances, of family estrangement, which had once commanded million-dollar checks, had become a repetitive loop. When the content does not evolve, the price point cannot be sustained. Buyers got tired, corporate ticket packages stopped moving, and the slow bleed of brand equity began. Here is the cruelty of the speaking circuit. It does not announce your demotion. It does not send you a letter. It does not call a meeting to deliver the bad news in person. It simply stops returning your agent's emails, stops booking you for the spring conference slate, stops inviting you to the off-the-record dinners where the next year's keynotes get lined up. The decline happens in the negative space, in the calls that do not come, in the calendars that do not fill, and by the time the speaker notices, it is already months too late. That, by every account, is exactly what happened to Harry through the back half of 2024. The phone did not ring. And when he finally realized it was not ringing, the market had already moved on, which led directly to phase 3, the disruption phase, 2025 into 26. When the Peak Performance Group signed the contract for the Melbourne summit, they did not want the old Harry. They were explicit about it. Internal communications suggest they specifically requested data-driven solutions. They wanted research, white papers, actionable frameworks for workplace wellness that could justify a $2,400 ticket price. They wanted a speaker who could give executives tools, not feelings. The tragic reality, Harry could not provide it. When the organizers realized there was no new data, no peer-reviewed research, no structural frameworks being offered, a clause known in the industry as the rescue clause was activated. The original $1 million dream fee was scrapped. The $50,000 fee that replaced it was not a paycheck in any traditional sense. It was, according to 2 separate sources familiar with the contract, a pity fee, a contribution to cover his showing up. Designed to ensure the event would not be canceled outright and embarrass everyone involved, think about what that means. The speaker's fee was not calculated to pay for his time. It was calculated to keep him in the building so the organizers would not have to refund every ticket and publicly admit the draw had collapsed. Here is where we need to talk about the timeline that led to this collapse. Because it did not happen overnight. It happened in a sequence of specific, documented moments. And each one pushed the whole enterprise closer to the edge of the cliff. January the 10th, 2026, inside the boardroom at Archwell in Montecito. A high-level briefing, according to sources, where the quarterly financial projections were laid out. The reality was stark. Cash reserves had plummeted to what insiders were privately calling a red zone alarm. The burn rate of the lifestyle, the security costs, the legal fees, the absence of a major new high-value contract, it all combined into a liquidity crisis that could not be ignored. It was in that room, under immense pressure, that the decision was made to greenlight the Australia tour. Not because of a passion for workplace mental health, because they needed cash. Fast. Then the hammer fell. February the 15th, 2026, The Crown Estate sent a formal 3-page notification that changed the entire economics of the enterprise. The document was clear. All remaining security subsidies and logistical support from the United Kingdom were officially and permanently terminated, effective immediately, even for international business travel. For Harry, this meant the cost of doing business just tripled overnight. He was now personally responsible for every dollar of his elite protection, every private jet charter, every secure communication line. The Australia tour, already undercapitalized, was now bleeding out before it even started. By April the 1st, the Melbourne marketing machine kicked into gear. The event was titled, with a certain amount of tone, deft confidence, The Prince's Insight. The arrogance of the initial pricing was a fatal mistake. $2,400 per ticket. The team was betting on the old royal magic. The idea that people would pay a premium just to be in the same room as a duke, they were wrong. By April the 8th, 4 days before the summit, the internal sales report leaked to investigators showed a number so low it was almost difficult to believe. Only 15 tickets had been sold to the general public. 15. A wave of panic swept through the local organizers. In a last-ditch attempt to save face, thousands of dollars worth of tickets were offered for free to local university students and nonprofit workers. And here is the most humiliating detail of the entire timeline. Even the students turned them down. They did not want the Prince's Insight for free, let alone for $2,000. The offer of a free ticket was not enough to fill the room. Think about what that says about the market's current verdict on his relevance. People would not take the product even at a negative price. 9:30 in the morning on April the 12th, Harry stepped onto the stage. He was expecting a roar of applause that would mask the empty seats. Instead, he was met with a chilling silence. No standing ovation. Just the muffled sound of 42 people shifting in their chairs. And, according to one witness, a distinct audible whisper from the back of the room. Why is he even still here? Why is he even still here? 4 words that probably sting more than any headline the tabloids could write. Because those words were not spoken by a journalist, they were not tweeted by a troll. They were said aloud by a stranger sitting in a half-empty ballroom in the middle of a city that was supposed to welcome him. That whisper is the verdict of the general public rendered in real time. And there is no public relations response to it. You cannot sue a whisper. You cannot issue a statement correcting a whisper. You can only absorb it and carry it and wonder how many other people in how many other rooms are thinking the same thing and simply not saying it out loud. But hold on, because while Harry was absorbing that humiliation in Melbourne, something else was happening across the country in Sydney, and it reveals a second, even more uncomfortable layer of this story. Because Meghan Markle was there, and she was not on her way to Melbourne. She was staying exactly where she was. This is the loneliness of the spare. Our sources in Melbourne confirm that Harry is currently grounded. There is a payment hold on his private travel arrangements. The $50,000 fee has been swallowed entirely by the $62,000 security bill, and the private jet company is reportedly refusing to take off until the balance is cleared. He is not just devastated, he is effectively stranded in a city that did not want to hear him speak. And the next stop on the tour has, according to our sources, already been quietly removed from the event website. No announcement, no press release, just a URL that used to exist and now does not. Meanwhile, the scene at 1 in the morning on April the 13th truly captures the depth of this fall from grace. A witness at the hotel bar, a space usually bustling with elite international travelers, spotted Harry sitting alone in a darkened corner booth. He was not reviewing speech notes. He was not checking the news cycle. His eyes were fixed on his phone screen, which, according to the witness, was playing a loop of old YouTube clips from the Platinum Jubilee and the 2018 royal wedding. A loop, over and over. Picture that for a moment. A prince, alone, in a hotel bar in Melbourne, watching the version of himself that existed before everything fell apart. Surrounded in those archival clips by the full machinery of a 1,000-year-old institution. The gold, the security, the adoration, the certainty. And then looking up from the screen to a half-empty bar in a city that, earlier that day, could not be bothered to fill a ballroom to hear him speak. That is not just a bad night. That is a man confronting the complete inversion of his own life. You and I have probably both had a version of this moment, scaled down. The quiet, ugly hour when you look at your phone, at an old photo or an old message or an old video, and you realize how far the current version of your life has drifted from the one you imagined you would be living by now. Most of us have that moment in the dark of a bedroom or in a parked car or at a kitchen table after everyone has gone to sleep. Harry had his moment in a hotel bar in Melbourne, on camera, with strangers watching, and this is the cost of a life lived on the public stage. Your worst nights do not belong to you. They belong to whoever is watching. The most telling detail, however, comes from a highly placed staff member within the hotel's premium services division. According to internal logs, between 7 and 9 o'clock on the night of the failed speech, Harry made 17 consecutive calls to a single number in Sydney. For over 2 hours, he attempted to reach his wife. The result? Total radio silence. 17 calls, not answered. While he was reeling from the worst professional humiliation of his life, Meghan was reportedly off the grid at a private, invitation-only launch for a high-end jewelry brand in a secluded Sydney penthouse. This was not a scheduling conflict. This was a public relations surgical strike. Let me sit inside that number for a moment. 17 consecutive calls to the same person over a window of 2 hours. Do you know what that kind of behavior looks like from the outside? It looks like a man in crisis, a man reaching desperately for the one person who is supposed to be his partner. And on the other end of those calls, according to sources, the phone was not being left on a nightstand somewhere by accident. It was being actively ignored. The team around Meghan had made the strategic decision, based on real-time data, that being associated with the Melbourne disaster would cost more than Harry would gain from being comforted through it. In the coldest possible terms, the math said, let him handle it alone. Our sources within the Sydney event circuit confirmed that Meghan's team had been monitoring the Melbourne ticket telemetry for at least 14 days. They knew the numbers were catastrophic. They knew the $50,000 flop was going to be the headline of the week. And the decision for Meghan to remain in Sydney, surrounded by luxury and high net worth influencers, was a calculated move to cut losses. In the brutal world of modern branding, Meghan's team applied what insiders call the principle of contagion avoidance, ensuring her image was not captured in the same frame as an empty ballroom, or a husband described as devastated. The separation is not just physical, it is strategic. While one side of the brand is desperately trying to sell vulnerability to a phantom audience, the other side is pivoting back toward the exclusive high society circles of Soho House memberships and luxury endorsements. The United Front may be the next thing liquidated from the Archewell portfolio. And here is the question that keeps me awake. When the person you sacrificed everything for refuses to answer the phone during your most public failure, where do you go from there? The answer may lie in a series of frantic emails sent to a legal firm in London just before dawn on April the 13th. Emails that, according to our sources, suggest Harry is looking for a way back to a life he once claimed to hate. But wait, because the contrast I am about to show you, the one between his situation and the one back in London, is what makes this story almost unbearable to sit with. The financial ledgers in London are telling a story of unprecedented triumph. In the exact same week that Harry stepped onto a stage in front of 42 people, the Royal Collection Trust in London released its mid-April quarterly report. The data is staggering. Revenue from visitors to sites specifically associated with Catherine, the Princess of Wales, has surged by an incredible 400%. 400, not a slight uptick, a tidal wave. While Harry is struggling to give away a $500 digital pass, the public is flooding the palace gates in record numbers. The appetite for the monarchy has not diminished. It has simply consolidated around different people. And here is the part that has to hurt the most. If you are Harry, Kate is not doing anything flashy. She is not on podcasts. She is not on Netflix. She is not giving interviews about personal trauma. She is simply doing the quiet, disciplined work of royal duty that Harry and Meghan repeatedly described as suffocating when they left, and the market in real time is rewarding her for it. 400% more revenue generated by doing the very thing the Sussexes walked away from. That is not coincidence. That is the market, acting on aggregate over millions of individual choices, issuing its verdict. Duty is more valuable than grievance. Restraint is more valuable than disclosure. Institution is more valuable than independence. Every dollar spent at a royal collection site is a small, quiet vote. And Harry is losing that election by a landslide he cannot spin. And the numbers get more brutal the deeper you look. The YouGov Consumer Confidence Index for April 2026, the gold standard for public perception, Harry's brand trust metric has hit an all-time low, falling into the -50 zone for the first time in history. For a public figure, that is not a bad poll. That is a commercial death sentence. It means more people actively distrust him than trust him, by a wide margin. And in the speaking industry, that number is not just embarrassing, it is disqualifying. But the real damage is happening in the corridors of the International Association of Speakers. This is the global nerve center of the public speaking industry. According to our sources, within that association, Harry's status has been officially downgraded from Tier 1 global keynote to high-risk lead. In the speaking world, this is the equivalent of a credit rating being slashed to junk status. When the association flags a speaker as high risk, insurance premiums for the event skyrocket, booking fees evaporate, and corporate lawyers start drafting escape clauses before the ink on any new contract is dry. This brings us to the most dangerous element of the entire collapse, something called the moral turpitude mechanism. This is a standard but lethal clause embedded in high-level endorsement and speaking contracts. It allows a corporation to unilaterally terminate a deal without paying a single cent in compensation if the individual's reputation falls below a certain public decency threshold or if their marketable authority collapses. Our investigation has uncovered that at least 2 major global sponsors are currently reviewing this specific clause in their existing agreements with Archwell. 2 global sponsors. The logic is brutally simple. If the public no longer believes in the speaker's authority, the brand itself is being damaged by association. The kill switch has been triggered. Harry is no longer seen as a catalyst for change. He is seen, in the cold language of corporate risk management, as a liability for the bottom line. The analysis is inescapable. The market has not turned its back on the British royal family. It has turned its back on the prince without a palace. Royalty, by its very nature, relies on a carefully maintained sense of mystery, of duty, of institutional backing. When Harry traded that mystery for a microphone and a series of personal grievances, he unwittingly traded his value for a commodity that the market is now rejecting. Once the mystery is gone, the price drops to zero. It does not matter how famous the name is, it matters what the name still means. And right now, in April 2026, the name is losing its meaning in real time. But here's the part I want you to sit with. The chilling detail I promised you at the start. The one that has, as far as I can tell, remained hidden until this very moment. Think back to the morning of April the 10th. 2 days before the Melbourne disaster, a black car from the British consulate arrived at the Montecito gates. We have received a verified report regarding the contents of a navy blue folder delivered that day. Inside that folder, on page 14, tucked quietly into the administrative updates section, lies a single cold directive. It does not mention money. It does not mention titles. It does not mention security arrangements or royal protocols. It is a formal notification of the permanent revocation of the diplomatic passport issued to the individual identified as Henry Charles Albert David. Read that again. Permanent revocation of the diplomatic passport. This is the ultimate security severance. Without a diplomatic passport, the prince is no longer an international envoy. He is a private citizen, subject to standard immigration queues, subject to standard visa restrictions, subject to zero state protection. When he lands in a country now, he stands in line with everyone else. When he fills out a customs form, he fills it out like a tourist. When he crosses a border, he does so at the mercy of the receiving nation, not as a protected representative of the British Crown. That one administrative change, buried on page 14 of a document most people will never read, represents the quiet, complete, final dismantling of his old identity. The palace did not issue a press release. It did not hold a briefing. It did not announce anything at all. It simply, through a bureaucratic act, removed the last thread of institutional privilege he had been holding on to. And that, I think, is why he was so devastated that morning in Melbourne. Not just because of the empty seats, not just because of the deficit clause, not just because of the hotel downgrade, but because deep down, he already knew. The foundation had been pulled out from under him 2 days before he ever stepped onto that stage. Think about the psychological weight of walking onto a stage when the only document sitting in your carry-on is a letter telling you the diplomatic protection of the country of your birth has been quietly switched off. That is not a man preparing to give a keynote. That is a man trying to hold a facade together while the walls behind him are being dismantled brick by brick, and he could not even say it out loud. He could not walk out to the 42 people in that audience and explain it. He had to stand there under the lights and perform the role of global thought leader while the paperwork in his briefcase said something very different. So, where does this go from here? Let me walk you through the 3 scenarios insiders are actively modeling right now. Scenario 1, the strategic disappearance. Our sources within the Australian tour circuit are already reporting hushed conversations regarding the upcoming dates in Brisbane and Perth. Expect a formal statement from Archewell within the next 48 hours citing exhaustion or unforeseen health concerns or family commitments. This is the classic public relations smokescreen. Behind the scenes, the restructuring is already underway. The live speaking arm of the brand is effectively dead. To survive, Archewell will likely retreat entirely into behind-the-scenes content production, attempting to sell stories from the shadows because they can no longer sell the man on the stage. Scenario 2, the litigious fallout. Peak Performance Group, the organizers who gambled on the royal aura, are facing a massive deficit. In the world of high-stakes contracts, brand magnetism is a quantifiable asset. If an organizer can prove that the speaker's team misrepresented their current market draw, they can trigger a breach of contract claim. We could be looking at a multi-million-dollar clawback lawsuit, where sponsors demand their investments back, citing a failure to deliver the promised global engagement. For a brand already facing a liquidity crisis, this would be the final nail in the coffin. Scenario 3, the quiet surrender. And this is the one that, frankly, I find the most emotionally resonant. The U turn back to London, defeated, isolated, financially drained. Harry may be forced to accept what insiders are calling the Windsor terms, a complete withdrawal from public life in exchange for a grace and favor residence, and a return to the institutional fold. It would mean the total abandonment of the Montecito dream, a public admission that the experiment of independence has failed, and the frantic emails to a London legal firm just before dawn on April the 13th suggest that Scenario 3 may be closer to reality than anyone in Sussex circles wants to admit. Imagine what that reconciliation would actually look like. It is not a red carpet event. It is not a photograph on the balcony at Buckingham Palace. It is a quiet, highly negotiated, legally dense document that surrenders commercial rights, speaking rights, memoir rights, and interview rights in exchange for a roof over his head and a fragile guarantee of family access to his children's cousins. It is the kind of document that Harry, 5 years ago, would have burned on principle. And today, according to the trajectory of every indicator we have analyzed, it may be the document he is literally begging the lawyers in London to help him secure. That, if it happens, would be the single most dramatic reversal of a public narrative I have witnessed in my career covering this family. A man who built a 5-year media empire on the thesis that the royal institution was the problem would, in the end, be asking that same institution to rescue him from the market it warned him he was not ready for. Which is most likely? Based on the current trajectory, Scenario 1 is already in motion. The strategic disappearance allows for a face-saving exit, even if the industry knows the truth. But scenarios 2 and 3 are not mutually exclusive. A man with a diplomatic passport revoked, a wife who will not answer the phone, a pending lawsuit, and an empty ballroom in Melbourne is a man running out of moves on the chessboard. The question is no longer whether the Montecito brand is in trouble. The question is whether the person inside that brand still believes in it himself. Because when the audience stops showing up, and the sponsors start reviewing exit clauses, and the wife stops picking up the phone, the only remaining variable is the speaker's own resolve. And resolve, unlike security contracts, cannot be invoiced. So let me bring this back to you, to the question I asked at the very beginning. How does a $1 million speaker become a $12,000 loss? The answer, as you now understand, is that it happens slowly, and then all at once. It happens through repetition, that becomes fatigue. Through grievance, that becomes noise. Through institutional exits, that become commercial liabilities. Through 17 unanswered phone calls on a night that should have been a triumph. Harry is not the first public figure to discover that fame is not the same as value. He will not be the last, but he may be the most public example of what happens when a person confuses the two. When you sell the crown's mystery for a microphone, you do not get to keep both. The market eventually forces you to choose, and the market in Melbourne chose for him. There is a lesson in this that goes far beyond the royal family. Every person watching this has, at some point in their life, been tempted to trade long-term leverage for short-term attention. To cash in the quiet, enduring asset for the loud, immediate applause. Harry's Melbourne ballroom is what that trade looks like after the applause fades. A room full of empty chairs. A $50,000 fee that cannot even cover the security bill. A passport that no longer opens the doors it used to. A wife who will not answer the phone. And an old Jubilee video playing on loop at 1 a.m. because it is the only place the version of yourself you used to be still exists. If that does not make you pause and think about what you are trading in your own life, nothing will. Now I want to hear from you. Drop a comment below and tell me, what do you believe was Harry's biggest mistake? Was it the exit from London? Was it the endless grievance interviews? Was it trusting Hollywood handshakes over royal institutions? Was it the assumption that personal pain would remain a saleable commodity indefinitely? I read every single comment, and I want to know where you stand. If this investigation opened your eyes, do me 2 quick favors. Hit that like button because it is the single most powerful signal you can send to the algorithm to push this kind of independent reporting to more viewers. And subscribe, because our next deep dive into the Archewell exit strategy and the frantic emails to that London legal firm is already in final edits. Then click the next video on your screen, because I promise you, what comes next is going to reshape how you see this entire story. Stay with me. The truth is the only thing that cannot be silenced. And in this case, the truth is only just beginning to speak.